Matthew Rae, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's begin by orienting people, geography-wise speaking, to to Perth-Wellington, pretty big area. So, could you just talk about, you know, Perth-Wellington as your constituency and
Yeah,
how you know it, and maybe talk a bit about some of the challenges that it's facing that you deal with on a daily
yeah,
basis.
yeah. Yeah, happy to. Yeah, Perth-Wellington is a little larger than the riding of Guelph, which your viewers and listeners are very familiar with. It's, I think, an hour and a half north to south across the riding. So it's all of Perth County in the north half of Wellington County. I actually grew up outside of Harrison on a dairy farm in Wellington County, and I'm a Guelph alum, so know the city very well, and the university, obviously. But a lot of issues affecting the people and the constituents I have the pleasure representing at Queen's Park are most likely similar to some of the issues the residents of Guelph are facing, whether it's a little out of apprehension still around Trump's tariffs and the
Mm,
current economic climate with the president who currently occupies the White House, and concern especially from, I have a lot of agriculture production, obviously, both on sort of the agriculture manufacturing side, which is kind of your equipment side, but also obviously uh, food production as well and food processing. But the second biggest industry after agriculture would be auto, so auto parts that supply many different companies. What some parts work with Linmar and Guelph there, but Toyota, Hyundai, you name it. If it's one of the big players, probably a parts or a third tier sort of auto manufacturer is located in Perth Wellington somewhere. And so obviously concern around the potential to renegotiate CUSMA and those potentials of tariffs there. So hearing that a lot over the past few months, having more opportunity to spend in my riding since we're not currently sitting in Queen's Park. But those are kind of some of the high level, and obviously affordability is top of mind to ensuring that we're continuing to keep taxes low provincially and putting more money back in families and people's pockets.
well, to dig a bit deeper on what's happening south of the border, and our relationship with it, I think everyone can agree that the premier has been about as hard as anyone is now on Donald Trump on this side or on the other side of the border. But I mean, the other flip side of it too is it feels like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong from your point of view, talking to people in your constituency, but it feels like just the instability and the craziness is sort of like factored into like our economic realities now. Like we could get more tariffs next month, we might get less tariffs next month. And is it from your point of view and again t talking to your constituents, do they feel like we just have to live with the craziness now, or is that there is still like an option to end the craziness and sort of get back to business as usual?
Yeah, I'm a rational optimist, Adam, and so obviously I still have hope, and I think you've seen that from the premier. He always mentions, yeah, I would argue he's probably the official opposition now for President Trump, both in Canada and unfortunately in the U.S. As well, when he goes on those American networks to speak directly to the American people. And I've heard from constituents, but also I work with U.S. colleagues at the state level, and everyone I talk to is just scratching their head what's happening from Washington right now. But I really think there is a lot of apprehension. You're seeing that from the business community. There is a lot of businesses willing to invest in Ontario. We continue to work to cut red tape and bring some of those permitting processes, the timelines down. But a lot of uncertainty. The president could wake up tomorrow, unfortunately, and rip up CUSMA, which would be devastating to Guelph and the rest of southern Ontario and Canada as a whole. And so we're really just focused on what we can control provincially is ensuring that we're making Ontario the most competitive place in seven to do business, and really ensuring that if this is our new reality for the next couple of years, we're figuring out how we work around that. Diversifying our trading partners really is a focus of the provincial government.
That is a focus, and I know infrastructure is too, and resource development. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you because I feel like this is an area that we kind of underappreciate in terms of economic development, especially as people are like trying to avoid sending money to the United States, is tourism, which is something like very much in your backyard,
Yeah.
because you represent Stratford, home to the Stratford Festival. Um, are and I did make a note of this a couple of weeks ago. The Ontario government gave some funding to various arts
Mhm.
initiatives and arts programs and arts events. Is that something, I guess number one is that maybe an underappreciated area where we can really hit um, Ontario's economic opportunity is like these touristy things, these arts and culture things. And is that something you would like to see the government do more of in terms of fostering economic development?
Yeah. Well, I think our government provincially has done a lot. As you mentioned a couple months ago now, we did announce some additional monies through the Experience Ontario and the Blockbuster. Those are the programs through Minister Cho's office in tourism on supporting the Stratford Festival, but other festivals as well. Also have the pleasure to represent Drayton Entertainment in
Yes.
obviously Mapleton there. But I think there is a lot of opportunity. You're seeing it this year. Like I'm seeing it talking to just my friends and family. They're choosing to spend their money, obviously, as you mentioned, in Ontario and in Canada. Lots of people have traveled to my friends to the East Coast versus going somewhere south, for example. And I think lots of people are taking advantage of our great provincial parks, which is wonderful to see as well. And so I think people, Canadians, are really focused on we're going to keep our money in Canada, support Canadian jobs and Canadian businesses. I think of, especially in Perth and Wellington and Guelph, there's a lot of agriculture is right next door to us. So a lot of opportunity around agritourism. I know myself, I had a private members bill last year now around that and reducing some of the risk and liability for those investments, for those farm operators to make those investments. Because it's something we saw out of COVID. Everyone's trying to get out of the cities to a little more
Right.
open spaces. Alora, Fergus, Guelph were one of those destinations. And so an agritourism component, but it's also great to see, as you mentioned, I have the pleasure of representing the Stratford Festival. A lot of American plates in the city today, which is good to see, still having that sort of openness to our American colleagues. We know we may not agree with the guy in the White House right now, but we obviously are still friends and family across the border. And so it's great to see that uptick. And I know the Stratford Festival, I'm sure the Shaw and others have been having a very successful season, sort of to the pre-COVID, hopefully, levels. We're finally getting out of that COVID lull for those theaters. And so it's really important to support that growth. And I think you've seen it with some of the advertisements the province has chosen to do, not necessarily just in Canada and Ontario, but in the States. So on Fox News, on CNN, the government of Ontario has been running investment advertisements, but also at the beginning of the summer, Minister Cho released a great ad called We Stand, and more or less it's just highlighting some of the great natural beauty and the tourist attractions, whether it's the CNE, Stratford Festival, places they can come and experience, and really demonstrating to our American friends that, you're obviously still welcome, despite the disagreements at the national level.
That's not a mixed message, you think? I mean, I've just thinking off the top of my head, I think a lot of Americans, no disrespect to Americans, sometimes act, and I think this is a cross-political spectrum thing in the United States that Donald Trump appeared in the White House one day and they were like, "Oh, I guess he's the president now."
Yeah, well, he did win the election
He
in the
did.
U.S. system, and so the American people and the Electoral College selected him to be president. But I think I still see it just in conversations in Stratford with any visitors. We like Stratford Festival obviously would welcome those American patrons back, and so but it really is it's to highlight to them like, hey, we're still a welcoming environment. In that. And I think you saw that from the premier and his comments around the very beginning of this trade dispute around the booing of each other's national anthem,
Right.
uh, not letting sort of that disagreement at, again, the national level affect the personal and familial relationships that many Canadians have with our American colleagues. And so it's important that we're standing up for Ontario. Again, those ads are highlighting Ontario, highlighting why Ontario is open for business. I always tell my colleagues, nothing against our Manitoba or Quebec colleagues. They are not our competition for investment. It is New
Right.
York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. That is what businesses are looking at. And so we're going to continue at the provincial level to provide an environment that is very competitive for those investments, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in industry. And so in a friendly manner, in a very Canadian manner, I'd say.
That's fair. I didn't mean to put you on the spot for
No,
answering for
no,
all
fair
Americans.
question.
But speaking of keeping things collegial, I was talking to one of your Queens Park colleagues, the Guelph representative, Mike
Yep.
Schreiner. He actually had some nice things to say about you in terms of working together about moving forward with the new hospital project in
Mhm.
Guelph. I want to talk about this specifically in a second, but broader picture. I mean, Guelph thinks it's the center of the universe. I think all that's a commonality
Very
of all
nice. Yeah,
writings.
very
It's very nice here. You're right. But I think that there's a feeling that we really need this new hospital, but I think that is also a feeling in anywhere that is expecting a new hospital. Can you talk a bit about sort of the weight of I guess pressure on the Ontario government in terms of like trying to roll out hospitals like all over the province
yeah.
when everybody wants their hospital now.
Yeah. It's Minister Jones says everyone wants and needs a new hospital, and you're seeing that investment through successive provincial governments from our government through our budgets. I mean, with 40 or 56 billion now, we are spending on just hospital infrastructure, redevelopment, or expansion. That includes some new hospitals. And so, again, as you mentioned, Mike was being very kind, it sounds like previously on your show. Mike is a great colleague to work with, and whether it's on the sort of Wellington County level, which we collaborate on some initiatives, or the Guelph level, as you mentioned, I've had the opportunity to tour the Guelph General Hospital with MPP Schreiner in the past, a couple times now, I believe. And really, from someone like, again, as I mentioned, I grew up in the north part of the county. To anyone who may be listening from the county side of things, Guelph kind of is a hub from the healthcare perspective. So that's why I'm happy to support those initiatives around potential expansion and redevelopment for the Guelph General Hospital, because it really is like I've had family obviously use the Guelph General Hospital. They can provide that next level of service. It's important to have the Groves and Louise Marshall in the county, but if it's more complex or it's a surgery of a higher level, obviously it's going to go to a larger urban center.
Right.
And so really ensuring that that capacity, and that's what you're seeing across the province, increasing that capacity, whether it's more beds, whether it's a new facility, or whether it's the CT or MRIs that we're rolling out across the province. Is to ensure you have the capacity maybe in the local community, but then also kind of in the regional hubs, which Guelph, I would argue, is one of those from a healthcare perspective, because we've seen a lot of growth. Fergus and
Yes.
Elora, Guelph, a lot of growth, a lot of new people coming to our communities, which is great. But obviously, our government's focus is on ensuring that we have the services there to support that increased population, whether that's the hospitals, the schools, and everything else that would come with that.
I will note you mentioned Louise Marshall, and it seemed like on a monthly basis there for the better part of a year, they were closing that ER on the weekend.
So yeah, the closures have gone down, which is great because of some provincial investment, HR challenges coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
And so those have been addressed, I work closely, obviously, with all my hospital boards. But those numbers have dropped significantly. This summer was very notable.
Yeah.
I think they had one weekend, which was great to see. Still got to work on that one weekend, which
Yeah.
obviously working to support the hospital board and the CEO and the management and the nurses and doctors at Louise Marshall. But it's great to see finally we're able to turn around that aspect as a provincial government, seeing a reduction in those sort of stoppages within the healthcare system in general, ensuring that we're hiring more nurses, providing that incentive for those, especially to work in rural and northern communities.
And we've seen the turnaround at Guelph General too. We had
Yeah.
these exceptionally long wait times that
Yeah.
were
Well, I know the investments we've made in the offload program, which Guelph has for the ambulance nurses
right.
to be there to help check patients in for triage, that side of things has been very beneficial. It's something I heard on the tour there with Mark, the current CEO
Mm.
of the hospital, mentioning sort of the provincial government's investments in the ambulance offload, reducing some of that pressure, which has been very beneficial.
I think they're still looking for more, Matt.
They're always looking for more. There's always need for more investment. And that's why I continue to meet with the great people at Guelph General and other healthcare providers.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to dig deeper a bit into the you talked about taking the tour. I know that Minister Jones has taken the tour
Yep.
of the hospital, and so I mean, I think this is the frustrating thing with politics is that like unless people are like hearing about it or they scroll past it on their phone and Apple News or on social media or something, people think nothing is happening. And I mean that's enormously frustrating. I get and frustrating for a lot of people in government too, I'd imagine. But in terms of like what's kind of going on in terms of I think we all agree there's a need,
Mhm.
there's a process that needs to be followed. Um, what assurances, I guess, I mean, again, these things happen in their own time, but I mean, for people who are like listening to this and going, Matthew Rae, when are we going to get the hospital? Where are we in the process? Where can you, what can you give people in terms of some assurance that it's on the radar?
Well, I know, as you mentioned, Minister Jones has toured I've toured it once with the minister, but I think she's been there a couple times, which is great to see sort of that opportunity to highlight the need, seeing it on the ground, that need locally, which is very key. I know it's great to be able to get provincial ministers out to Guelph and other areas across the province so they know it's not just that you're deciding in downtown Toronto, you're going to
Right.
the actual site. It is a process. I can understand that process is frustrating. Like Guelph, obviously, general is not my riding, but I have hospitals in similar sort of capital, no new hospital requests, but
Right.
redevelopment in some wings, which the ministry would be involved in. And so uh, we're looking at sort of the planning grant stage, giving the hospital those tools to sort of figure out like, are we going to redevelop out this site? Do we need to find a different site? Again, that's up to the decision of the hospital board and the city, and how to work with that. And so they're kind of at those stages, but those conversations, I'll tell your listeners can take heart, and those conversations have begun from both Minister Jones's office and Mark and his team. And so that is underway and working through sort of that process as well. These are major government investments in communities, so it does take a time and a process to get the engineering done, get the planning done, unfortunately. But I know it is. I know Mike has mentioned it, Mike Schreiner, to me a few times, and I know we are focused on kind of that. We're using it as a regional healthcare sort of approach.
Hmm. For sure. Um, Looking a bit ahead, you did mention the legislature's on a bit of an extended break until after Thanksgiving, but I mean, um, there was a lot done back in the spring. I know there's a lot left to do. What are you in particular looking forward to getting done once you're back at Queen's Park?
Yeah, we had a very busy spring session. We had a provincial election this year too. So many of us almost forget about that.
I noticed. I noticed.
But in addition to the federal election, obviously, in the spring session, we passed. So through all three readings of a bill in our assembly it goes through, we passed seven government bills, some private members' bills as well. I know in the fall session we'll have a fall economic statement, as is standard practice for most governments. From the Minister of Finance. So really, again, it gives an opportunity for the government of the day to lay out their fiscal plan, but also in our current situation, how are you going to continue to make those investments in healthcare? For example, the 56 billion we are making in hospitals, just going back to your previous question, I've only had the pleasure to serve for 3 years now in the assembly. That has gone up in my time. So seeing further investments in hospital infrastructure, I'm sure will be a component of the fall economic statement, but also supports and for small businesses and businesses in general that are affected by Trump's tariffs. We've seen it with steel and aluminum and copper sectors. Some direct supports we've already provided to those businesses, and really ensuring that we're keeping costs down. Affordability across the board, whether whether you own a business or work, obviously for a business, is really a concern for families still, understandably. And so really looking forward to that. Obviously, we have a very ambitious plan to build a lot of things. So there'll be some legislation, I'm sure, around interprovincial trade from the Minister of Economic Development. And I'm sure there'll be additional things from other ministries on how we continue to build out Ontario.
Hmm. Um, Along with that, just to address the stuff that's already been done, because I don't want people to say I went too easy on you in this. So I'm gonna just
That's fine.
go after a couple of things. Because one of the things, I mean, that was passed, Bill 5,
Yep.
in the spring. I think there were a lot of people who felt the whiplash of that, and I think one of the things that strikes me is and just as a community observer watching planning stuff happen in Guelph, is a lot of people don't like the change. They don't like the rapid pace of change. They don't like turning the speed up on change, especially on these big projects. And I imagine you probably get a lot of that too. But in terms
Mhm.
of like balancing, we need to act quickly and trying to acclimate people to the pace of change we need
Yeah.
is, how do you balance that? And when you're talking to constituents who are like, I don't like this, can we slow it down a bit?
Mhm.
How do you, you know, cross that distance?
Yeah, I can understand the concern. There has been a lot of change. Like I know, I guess it's a good thing people are kind of forgetting COVID. It was not a fun time, but that's over 5 years ago now. That dark period in our collective history was happened. But I think what I always tell people is like we are, as we go back to President Trump, obviously not very popular guy in Canada for obvious reasons, but we are unfortunately in an economic fight or war with our colleagues in the States. We need to get stuff to market quickly. And the one silver lining to the entire trade dispute right now, I think, is Canadians and Ontarians